Hello everyone. I just kind of wanted to do a video showing that you could play Pure Shred Werewolf, leveling up to from 1 to 100. I know a lot of people's biggest complaint is that they see Stormwolf as one of the top builds, and they're like, I can only play Werewolf if I'm Tornado or Lightning or something. And while Shred Werewolf benefits heavily from adding other elements into its build, like a Lightning Legendary or a Poison trait, it is possible to do pretty much a pure Werewolf Shred build. And I usually reference it as Physical Shred. So I'll just show off what I've been doing. I'm planning on using this all the way to level 100. I've been playing Werewolf since level 1. I did a little bit of a dual shape shift in the middle, but I swapped back. After a while I tried Poison, Blurred Beast, but Shred just feels a lot better to play. The playstyle is a lot more fun. It's a lot more reminiscent of that Diablo 2 I'm just gonna slap ya forever kind of playstyle. Except this one has jumps, so it's even better. For abilities, I use Shred, I use Debilitating Roar for defensive, Blood Howl as offensive and defensive. I use Hurricane as well, just because it has a chance to make enemies vulnerable, and there's that legendary that gives you the plus skills. Claw is what I use for my generator, and then my ultimate is Grizzly Rage because it's so much better than like every other ultimate pretty much. For legendaries, I've got these topazes in, don't mind those. At some point I should switch those to the blue ones for Fortify because Grizzly Rage is up so often that you don't get as much benefit from these, but these do prevent you from dying in situations where Grizzly Rage is down and you get stuck in crowd control. So I do like the topazes, but they're probably not the best. For the helmet right now I'm using Debilitating Roar. It turns it into a werewolf skill. The only reason you use this is so that you can use it during Grizzly Rage. The immobilize isn't really important, but if you do happen to get immobilized from using this, then you get more damage to CC and poison targets, so that's not bad. For the chest, I actually just got this Mad Wolf's Glee and swapped to it yesterday, but I have not been using it until yesterday, and honestly, it's not all it's cracked up to be. It doesn't really give me much damage. Some of the stats on it are also kind of wasted, like poison damage, nobody cares. Movement speed, it's nice, but it's honestly not needed for the build, and you lose max HP for using this item, so I'm not very happy with it. But it's cool to see Shred get like so many plus skills. Like I have 11, and then when I use Hurricane I get up to 13, but I don't know. I don't think you should use the, well, I don't know if I want to say that. It's okay. It's just okay. It's not really good. It's just okay. But you can use any legendary chest. I'll actually show you the one that I was using until I put this on, just to give you a reference. You can hear my cats meowing in the background, I'm sorry. But they're adorable, so I'm not putting a stop to it. Alright, so the chest piece that I have is right here. So I was using this just damage reduction, willpower, damage reduction, and that damage reduction to distant enemies, if I had the materials I would have re-rolled it to max HP, but I don't like doing Helltide, that's a me thing. So you can use something like that. My gloves, I've been using, and the legendary power was damage reduction while shapeshifted into werewolf. Very important. Gloves, Blood Howl increases crit chance. Can't get much better than that. These gloves are freaking amazing. Shred, crit chance, lucky hit, attack speed. Ugh. This build is beautiful on two things, crit chance and attack speed. The attack speed makes it play so much better. It's so much more fun when you have attack speed on this, I will say. And crit chance is just mandatory so that you're healing and doing all sorts of extra damage and stuff. Pants, I'm using the 0.50% armor every time you do damage. This legendary is way too good. Everybody uses it. Honestly, I hate legendaries like this because they're so strong. Everyone uses it. It cuts down on the choices that you can have on your build. So I don't like that. But pants are wonderful. Max life, damage reduction to close, damage reduction while fortified, damage reduction from distant enemies. There's nothing I would want more than the stats that are on these pants. Boots. Hurricane is active. You gain +2 ranks to your shapeshifting. I like this one quite a bit. It cuts the cooldown down on debilitating roar. It makes Bloodhowl heal more. It makes Shred do more damage. It's just great. Evade granting 70% movement speed for 1 second is the worst affix ever. I wish that it didn't exist, or you had some sort of choice on your innate affix on boots. There's really only 2 good ones, and one of them is only good for very niche builds, and the other one everybody else wants. So nobody wants 70% movement speed for only 1 second. It's not very useful. Weapon right now, I'm using critical strikes with core skills increase your attack speed. I think this is an incredible non-unique power to use for this build. It feels so good to attack so quickly. I'm using it on a two-hander because I only have found good two-handers. I have not found a main-hand offhand combo that has good stats on it. One of my biggest complaints is that you don't find 800 eye level items often enough for you to have the opportunity to find good stats. So this is just what we're working with. It's not even all that well rolled. Core skill damage is freaking amazing. Willpower is awesome. Damage over time is useless to me, and I'm using the crit strike to crowd controlled enemies. But remember, I'm only level 81. I'm not running into enemies that get unstoppable all the time, and when I do, I would probably swap 2 damage to vulnerable gems instead. For necklace, critical strikes with shred deal 30% of the damage dealt as lightning. This is, unfortunately, this is almost something I'd call a mandatory legendary power for werewolf, and pretty much all werewolf builds that use shred, because this damage is actually insane. You notice things just melt when you use this legendary power because you crit so often, and your crits do so much damage, and then this does so much damage, and it really doesn't seem like it would be that good, but it actually is insanely good, and it's very hard to give this item up. For a neck, you're going to want cooldown reduction and Envenom passive. Venom passive is probably a little too strong for many druid builds, so it's kind of a little bit again of that. You don't really have a choice because you can literally get crit damage multiplier on your necklace, so instead of crit damage additive on your necklace. The other things I got on here are just spirit cost reduction and total armor. I couldn't do much about those. Total armor I'm not mad about at all. Spirit cost reduction I'm also not mad about. Those are nice things to have, but they're not ideal things to have. Then we've got our Direwolf Ring. This is a mandatory legendary for this build because you need to have Direwolf as your Grizzly Rage. It also gives you spirit cost reduction, which is really nice. You have a little bit of wiggle room with this depending on where you are at in your Paragon journey. I've seen some people use this on a two-hander weapon to make their Grizzly Rage 100% spirit cost free, which is fantastic for people that want to pull that off, especially early on. Absolutely great choice. I was using it on the neck for a while, but I realized that having 75% spirit cost reduction versus 50 didn't make that much of a difference for me, and I reached a point where I wanted to have the extra lightning damage on my neck. So you can wiggle those things around. You can take the attack speed from the weapon and put it on a ring. You can take the Grizzly Rage and put it on a weapon, whatever you feel you're at in your spirit journey, because Druid really is leveling. It's about managing your spirit in different ways at different points of the leveling process. And I've got the duration of Grizzly Rage is increased by 1 second because I can't find this legendary. I found it once, put it on something else, never found it again. So we codexed it. But you're just going to want this because the 1 second to 5 seconds is really, really nice. It increases your damage quite a bit the longer you can be in Grizzly Rage, but the important part is the critical strike damage and how it stacks. So you're going to want this. Gems for jewelry right now is armor. If that changes, I'm sure the whole community will know. So for rings, I've been going for crit strike chance, vulnerable damage, and lucky hit chance. And then crit strike damage and max HP are really other things that you'd want. So this ring has crit strike chance and crit strike damage and max life HP, but it has a lucky hit chance. It's really hard to find good rings. So trying to play around with those stats, get those ones. It gives you a little bit of wiggle room so you can actually equip upgrades, which is another complaint I have. It's so hard to find upgrades in this game. That's the gear though. Consumables, for leveling, I pretty much just use the 2% crit one. You never die with this build really, so you can go ahead and do that. For skill tree, if we can move into that. So you have extra points in this skill tree to play around with, which is nice. And I'll go over those when we get to them. But we have claw up to 10% to attack twice. I take 3 in 3 abundance. I have heard many reports that this wild impulses does not work correctly, and I don't know if it does, so I don't take it. Your core skills, from what I understand, the spirit cost goes up, the damage does not. If that is true, then this would be a useless talent. But I don't know that for sure. I don't. I tried to test it, and it kind of seemed like my shred damage was staying the same, but it was so hard because the variance on shred was just so high, and I was running into this issue where I would shred once, let the timer go off on shred, go to town to reset the enemies I was fighting, come back, and then my very next shred would be the next shred in the combo. It wouldn't start over again. So I was like, I'm not going to be the best person to test this. So I just don't take this right now. If it does work the way it's supposed to, this would not be a bad choice depending on where you're at in your spirit journey. Next we've got Shred. We're down to the all dashes critical strike damage. I've got Predatory Instinct. I only have 1 in the movement speed. 6% more movement speed for taking 3 doesn't seem like a big deal to me. Dire Wolf increases your movement speed. I feel like it's kind of a you just have nowhere to put your talents kind of talent. I took 3 of 3 here and 3 of 3 here. I took 3 of 3 Ancestral Fortitude because even though resistances kind of suck right now, they're not completely useless. So I just took some to reduce some poison damage, reduce some fire explosion damage, reduce some ice damage. You know, a little bit helps. Took Blood Howl, just 1. Preserving Blood Howl for attack speed. Debilitating Roar, this one we actually did put 5 points in. And then actually, I don't want that. I had slow when I was using the Umbral Ring. So I was using the Umbral Ring to give me 1 spirit every time I CC'd a target. That's the only time I would take innate Debilitating Roar. But I'm not using that anymore. And you can use that, especially early on. You should use that because it's quite good for generating spirit. But for me, since I didn't have main hand offhand, I couldn't keep my lightning and have the Umbral Ring. So I went with the lightning. But yes, Debilitating Roar. Healing, much better. Then down here we have nothing, except I have 4 to Poison Creeper on a helmet, because that's just the life we're living. Hurricane, I'm taking vulnerable at higher levels and stuff. You should probably take the deals less damage, but if you're not dying while leveling, there's no reason to take that. So I take vulnerable, and vulnerable is amazing. Now here's where my extra points come in. I have these wonderful lightning passives. These lightning passives just result in more damage. So that's where I've been putting my extra points. I took 2 out of 3 for storm skills to have a chance to make enemies vulnerable because Hurricane is a storm skill. I just want more chances to get vulnerable. I also increased the duration of Hurricane by 2 out of 3. I'm a little confused on this talent, so that's why there's only 2 out of 3 in it. When I look at Hurricane, it does damage over 9 seconds when you have 2 out of 3, and when you have 3 out of 3, the tooltip still says that it does damage over 9 seconds. So either the tooltip is lying, which happens literally all the time, or the third point is doing nothing for Hurricane, and I don't know which it is, so I only put 2 points in. Maybe someone can tell me if that's accurate or not. And then I have Bad Omen, 3 out of 3. I love this talent. I absolutely love this talent because when you deal damage to a vulnerable or immobilized enemy, or stunned, you can just get 55% weapon damage to hit them with a lightning bolt. Vulnerable is something that we have up quite often, and as Shred, you do a lot of burst to targets you first hit. So what happens is you shred a new enemy, and then they become vulnerable, and you shred them again, and then lightning bolts hit them, and that's just wonderful. So I love this. It's just free damage. And while you don't need to take these, if you are very against lightning damage happening at all, you will nerf yourself a little bit by not taking extra damage talents and extra damage legendaries just because they're lightning. But the way it plays is you are still just going to be shred. But yeah, I think these are good. And then down here, these are not optional talents. We have Neurotoxin. I only have 1 out of 3. I think that the slow case can be made for you to put more points into the slow and make it better, because I think they're poisoned all the time from your crits. In Venom, we have 6 out of 3 because of the necklace we went over earlier. The poison enemies taking 60% multiplicative additional crit strike damage is actually really strong. And then I only have 1 in 3 out of Toxic Claws because the poison's only job here is to enable other multipliers. So we want 1 point so that our crits actually do poison, and then that poison's only job is to make us take less damage from enemies and for us to do more damage to enemies. So we only want 1 point. I had 3 points in rabies from something, from items. You don't want points in rabies. However, when you go into Grizzly Rage, you do get rabies, and you will use rabies from time to time in Grizzly Rage, only because it allows you to spread poison really fast, which means if you have a large pack of enemies, you can put poison on all of them with 1 ability press, and that's damage taken reduced and damage done increased. So I don't mind those 3 points on rabies. Over here in the Ultimate Land, we are taking 1 in Defensive Posture, 1 in Thick Hide, and 3 out of 3 in Unrestrained. So the reason we do this is because when Grizzly Rage is down, and there are about 20 seconds-ish of time between Grizzly Rages where you can't Grizzly Rage, and that's what this is for. So when you get control impaired, this is just reducing the amount of time that's going to happen, because you're fortified all the time anyways. Grizzly Rage all the way down. Now here's where you have a choice. You can take Lupin Ferocity to increase your critical strikes and deal 60% increased damage with that 6th hit. If you do this, you kind of have to, in order to min-max the critical strikes, you kind of have to play this game where you want your 3rd strike of Shred to be a Lupin Ferocity hit, and it's not fun to do that. And while you don't have to do that to play this build, you can just let it be and crit. I do find that the build feels a lot better when you take Bestial Rampage. The attack speed, you have it all of the time, 20% attack speed, and it feels amazing. And more attack speed means more opportunities to crit, which means just a lovely, lovely time. And it's kind of a trade-off, because Lupin Ferocity feels worse to play because you attack more slowly, and this build feels it at its best when you have more attack speed. It just feels so much more enjoyable to play when you have attack speed. Crit is technically better because it's got your crit damage multiplier and your crit strike chance, but I think you will find that you're going to have a much better time if you use Bestial Rampage. My advice, use both. Try them both out. Find out which one really works for you, because you honestly could use either. That's the skill tree. If you don't want to use these lightning ones, you could literally put more points into the fortify stuff. You could put more points into the movement speed here for werewolf, and you could try out the wild impulses. The wild impulses, probably, if it works correctly, you'd probably want that over some of the lightning, but I don't know for sure if it works or not. So there we are. Paragon, I'm not going to tell you I'm a Paragon master, and I'm going to tell you that you might not want to follow my Paragon advice over somebody else's, and the reason for that being is that I have like a little argument in my head, I guess, that while many people the meta seems to be for Paragon is that you want as many glyphs as possible, and in order to get as many glyphs as possible, you'll sacrifice your damage on all your other glyphs in order to get that 6th glyph. And I don't know if I completely subscribe to that idea, because when you are able to min-max all of your previous glyphs, you get quite a bit of damage. So it really depends on what your 6th glyph is, but for this build I am working towards having only 5 glyphs and then maximizing the damage boosts you get on each of those glyphs. That's what I'm doing. So you might not want to follow my advice on that, because I'm only level 81, but that is what I'm doing. But I'll show you this anyways in case you're interested. So from the start, we're going damage route. For this, I put the werewolf glyph in here. The reason I did that is because there are 70 willpower nodes in this little area, and werewolf gets more damage from more willpower. So that's why I put willpower here instead of the usual exploit glyph that you would have. That's why you see these little willpower nodes here. Right now, I'm at a point where I only have enough to activate the node. Then I went up the damage way, up here. I went into the werewolf, the Lust for Carnage board. At that point, I went directly for attack speed, because attack speed is a beautiful, beautiful thing. I went up, got Lust for Carnage. We over here and got this glyph. I put Territorial here, because there's a lot of dexterity nodes in this area to maximize Territorial. I have not gotten that far yet. I got the Feral node, and that's as far as we've gotten. So, work in progress over here. But we're going to get these dexterity ones. We're going to get every dexterity one here. From Lust for Carnage, we went up here and got Ferocity, Crit Strike damage. I am planning on getting this Crit Strike damage node later, but I am not planning on getting these werewolf skills later. We're going to move down here into the Poison board. For the Poison board, I went down south and picked up this glyph slot for Spirit. Spirit is the critical strike glyph. It's beautiful. And there's many dexterity nodes in this, especially once I expand this glyph. It's going to be great. We're going to get so much bonus crit strike damage from this glyph. I went down here for damage reduction from poisoned, damage to poisoned, and then we got enough dexterity to activate the secondary effect, and we went down here. This is the Inner Beast board. The only thing we care about on this board is the attack speed and the glyph slot. So my idea here is a little bit different from what you'd probably expect. So we went down and got the attack speed. We went and got the shapeshift damage so that I could get this dexterity node. We put exploit here. We got enough dexterity to activate exploit secondary. And I am not going to get this armor rare node because I'm instead going to maximize all of the dexterity nodes on this part of the board so that my exploit damage, my vulnerable damage will be as high as possible. And I just want you guys to know the way I chose where to put my glyphs is I went and mathed out how, for each of the boards I'm using, how many willpower nodes are in each and how many dexterity nodes are in each, because we're only using dexterity and willpower glyphs here. So I really wanted to figure out which boards had the most, and I put the glyphs in accordingly. So after that, after we activated exploit, I went back up here. We went up and got, so most boards who do this one will go through the middle here in order to get Height and Malice. I didn't want to do that because I felt like it was a bad idea. I see everyone skipping this little section, which I don't understand why. You can get 8%, 16%, 8% again, damage to elites. Elites are the hardest part of every dungeon. I don't know why you would skip this, but that's where we're at, so I didn't. So I just went and did that. I am planning on getting this 8% damage to elites later, just to keep that in mind. I went up here, I went down here, I just got the poison resistance and the Height and Malice. I am going to skip this poison resilience node. 4% max life on a rare node is not a lot of max life. It's not even 4% technically because of the returns. And 24 poison resistance is decent for resistance, but resistances also aren't great. So I'm actually going to skip this node and see how that goes. Now, that's as far as I've gotten. What my plan now is to go up here and get Ancestral Guidance. I'm going to get Spirit on Kill here, move my way up. I'm going to go up here and get Core Skill Damage, all the Core Skill Damage nodes here. I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to put Fang and Claw as a glyph in here, which is going to boost our magic nodes in the area as well. We're going to get this Resolve just for the willpower and a little resist. We're going to get the Core Skill Damage nodes all here, and then we're going to get as many Dexterity, but no, it's willpower. You get 40 willpower for Fang and Claw. Let's just make sure I didn't make that up. Yeah. So you'll get so the beautiful thing about this node is that you want only 40 willpower, not every willpower. So we'll get exactly 40 willpower from this node, and then you just want as many good magic nodes as possible. So that's what the plan is going to be. And then after that, we're going to fill out the other nodes I mentioned, this elites, this crit damage. We're going to maximize all of our other glyphs, and that's what my plan is for Paragon. Is it the best answer? No, probably not. And also, I just wanted to point out that I'm very aware that my boards are not in the order that they should be. So what I mean by that is that my Ancestral Guidance board up here, because it's a last, it's very unlikely that I'll be able to obtain 540 intelligence in order to get the extra core skill damage. In a perfect world, I would reset and move this board much earlier, but it's not necessary for leveling to 100, which is what my goal with this build is to do, is to just level to 100 and then see how far we can get. I know with some shred builds, people have been able to get to 65, 70 for the Nightmare Dungeons, so we're going to take a gander at that and see what we can do. But I would say that core skill damage is very, very important because it's also shred damage, and if you can get this bonus by putting this board earlier in your Paragon adventure, then it would probably be a better idea. So yeah. Yep. Alright. I think that's about everything. If you have questions, let me know. This is a journey we're all trying to figure out together, so don't expect anything perfect from me yet. But anyways, thanks for watching and listening to me ramble like a crazy old man. See you later.